acidic, which was responsible for the BBS modding, but that was more of a pretty logical extension of the group. And then later on down the road, we started another group called, or we didn't really start, we reformed a group called Remorse. There's two Remorse guys over here. And Remorse was a group that was dedicated to producing ASCII art. And so the differences between ASCII art and ANSI art in simple terms is basically that ASCII art is still produced with characters, but without color, without the color codes. And I just want to show a couple examples throughout the years of ANSI art. ANSI art is, it's kind of one of those things. ANSI itself stands for American National Standards Institute. And they developed, I mean, they're responsible for a number of standards. Yeah, and so the standard specifically that they developed that we are naming the art after is ANSI X3.64, that particular one. And that was like, I think that was created in the late 70s, like 1979, I think. But, so we just, you know, that's called ANSI art. And so you can kind of see how the art has progressed. This is some ANSI art from Aces of ANSI art. Yeah. So this stuff was all created between the years of 1989 and 1991. I believe this one's animated, so yeah, it is. This was created, this particular ANSI was created by an artist named Mondo Man. He was one of the, after Acid left Aces of ANSI art, it kind of dealt a devastating blow to the group because we took pretty much all of the active members. But they did kind of have a short kind of second coming, and Mondo Man was a part of that. He was a big part of that. So they would have otherwise died in 1990, but he kept the group going for about another year. And he did a number of really good ANSI animations. Probably between 1989 to 1993, the bulk of the ANSIs were like this. They had cute little ANSI animations. I mean, they're pretty simple. And this is about the same speed that they display at while you're connected to a BBS, maybe slower, depending on the speed of your modem. Oh, this is the one I wanted to bring up. So, I mean, this standard was basically, this particular ANSI standard was basically designed as a standard method of communications between terminals. And so it was never intended to be used for, you know, purposes of art. So it's kind of cool that, that's one of the cool aspects of this. And then you can just really see this is a nice feature. I'm using a program called Acid View to view these ANSIs. Normally you'd have to type them with DOS and have a specific device driver called ANSI sys loaded in your config sys in order to view these. But Acid was actually one of the first groups to start producing these viewers starting from the DOS days. And we've continued it on and, you know, continued to port this over to Windows, and it's become a pretty sophisticated program. And it allows you to, in real time, just kind of scale back. I mean, normally it would look about this large, really blocky, but if you wanted to, some of the larger ANSIs, see if I can find one like this, normally this would scroll on a BBS, you know, one line at a time. But if you want to, you can just kind of, oh, this is what it would look like if I was standing 20 feet away from my computer screen or something like that. So these are some that were created in 92, and just jumping forward to 96. I mean, the level of quality and sophistication is just orders of magnitude better. It's really amazing. The interesting thing is that, in my opinion, the largest ACID ever was 144 members concurrently. When I officially, quote unquote, retired from running the group, we had about 720 some odd members total, like throughout the entire time. But there are still groups that do this, but it's much more of a labor of love. There's no practical reason really. Bulletin boards barely exist at all today. There's a fraction of a percent compared to what there used to be at the height of probably, I guess, the mid 90s. But people still do create this art today. Although ACID stopped, officially we stopped doing ANSI in 1997, so we could move and focus towards doing VGA and doing other forms of art. And that was a really hard decision to make. But the reason that we made that is we could see kind of the decline in bulletin boards coming. We knew that the internet was going to replace bulletin boards, and we didn't want to be hanging around just we had kind of this level of quality where we're releasing 30-40 pieces of really good art every month, and we knew that demand wouldn't be there, the number of artists wouldn't be there, and so we just kind of made a conscious decision to eliminate that group, that subgroup in ACID. Let's see. And so that's why you kind of see there's 1997, and that's it. There's really no more ANSIs after that. But Remorse, on the other hand, still continues to do ASCII to this day. So just I think about a month ago, they put out an ASCII art pack. So they still continue to do art. It's a slightly different style, very rarely colored, although sometimes it is. So it's still kind of like an extension of ACID. What else can I talk about? Oh, as far as oh, okay, yeah, okay. As far as the amount of time and dedication that it took, that's something that really, even if you expressed it articulated it perfectly in words, I think it's really difficult to appreciate unless you've done it yourself. But basically, at the height of the competition within the ANSI art scene, it was so busy that as a freshman in high school, I was the only kid who had a pager, and this was at the time when you were a police officer or a doctor or a drug dealer. I mean, those were the three professions that you had in order to have a pager. And so I had my pager go off in class for something really that was fucking important. It was immediate. I had to go use the payphone and use my red box to call back and see what this super ACID emergency was. And it's going off during class, and the teacher's let's come up here, and then he has this, he talks to me. He waits till after class. He's like, talk to me after class. Okay, fine. So I come up to him after class. He's like, Christian, this is really serious. What? Why do you have this pager? Look into my eyes. Tell me honestly. Are you dealing drugs? No. Why do you have this? It's for business. I run a business. And he just accepted that, gave me the pager back, and that was it. Never left it on again in class. But it was to the point that I actually carried a pager, and there were certain things like if somebody was trying to, for example, recruit another member out of ACID and into their competing group, that would warrant an emergency phone call that I had to call right away and find out what this groundbreaking news was. Or if there was a member that was looking to join ACID who was a really superstar artist, or something like that, that I actually took it so seriously that I went through all the things that it took to get a pager. I mean, at that time you needed to go through a credit check and all this. I had to really social engineer my way into getting a pager at that age. Other things, other ways that, what else? basically running an art group at that time was extremely time consuming. So like, it was pretty much a full-time job. So it was something that if you let it, and if you wanted to be one of the best groups, you would just, you'd come home, as soon as you got home, you would work on managing the group, contacting all the artists, seeing how they're doing, seeing, you know, what's the news out there, seeing if there's any rumors that somebody's spreading about your group, and keeping up to date on all of that, dispelling any rumors and such. It was very competitive, I guess. We were frequently challenged by other groups trying to get, like, for example, Jed was probably one of the prized artists within Acid, and nobody had his phone number except for me. In fact, none of our telecom members who were responsible for, you know, keeping in touch with everybody had his phone number. None of our couriers, sometimes we would assign a courier to pick up art from an artist. I was basically his personal courier. We had a very, you know, tight one-on-one relationship. And it was kind of like, at the time, it was ICE's big thing to do anything they could to recruit him into ICE. Anything. And so somehow, and I'm pretty impressed, there was, at the time, one of the senior members of ICE, who went by the handle of Metalhead, managed to dredge up his phone number and contact him and do anything he could in order to persuade him to join ICE. And at the time, there was a really strict policy within the group, within Acid and most other groups as well, that you couldn't be a member of a competing group, because that was an obvious conflict of interest. The policy was called no dual grouping. And so ICE had the same policy, but he's like, oh, it's okay. This is actually in Jason Scott's BBS documentary. He's like, oh, it's okay, yeah, you can be in both groups, and we don't even care if you don't draw for us that much. Just do something once in a while. Just do a logo or something, and that'll be sufficient. You know, just because he knew what it meant and what it signified in order to get that artist into his own group. And there was the same thing. There's a lot of contentions like that with members. Probably the first big one was by an artist called Martial Law. And let me see if I can find his. Yeah. Let's see. I think I know where it is. That's it. This is probably. Let's see. This is one of the first full-length scrollers. Martial Law is one of the first artists to really kind of make people take a break from doing the ANSI animations and start doing these multiple line scrolling ANSIs, which are like, you know, hundreds of lines long. He was one of the first artists to do this. And the contention point between him was he was in a group called RPM, which was one of the first groups to merge with Acid. But he was also in another group as well in his local area code. So he's kind of being, you know, there's a fight over whether he was in Acid or whether he was in ICE. And ultimately he ended up releasing some ANSIs for both. But there was a number of contentions like that. What else? Put out there. Oh, okay. Yeah, going back to that. It was running Acid. Throughout the course of running Acid, I actually skipped a lot of like family vacations because I was so dedicated to running this group, which I know seems kind of crazy in retrospect. But one vacation that I did go on was a skiing trip in Tahoe with my family. And I made a point of telling just like two like high-ranking members in the group that I'm going to be on a ski trip for a few days here, you know, pay me if you need me, blah, blah, blah. And so they thought it would be really funny to start a rumor that I was dead and that I had gone on a ski trip and that I had died. And people fell for this because prior to me leaving for this trip, I was always available. If they called here, I would be getting back to them immediately, or, you know, it was like as soon as I got home, the phone was ringing anyways. And so all of a sudden, you know, there was this Radman outage for 4 days straight. Oh, he must really be dead. And so from that point on, you know, well, it was just kind of like